This Three Beards Media podcast may contain mature themes, and if you're not down with that, we got 3 words for you. Like the podcast. Nailed it!
Good evening, everyone, and wow, what a week. We're here for episode 13. We made it, lucky number 13. I'm Andrew Barber with my co-host, Drew Shipley, and it's been a very eventful week for Iowa football, probably one of the most eventful weeks in maybe the Kirk Ferentz era. I don't know if there's been any more eventful week that you can remember in the Kirk Ferentz era, but I think this is kind of it. So let's just opening drive, kickoff. Let's start it out. We're not going to bury the lead here. Beth Getz stepped in and essentially terminated Brian Ferentz and said he's done after the season. He will coach out the rest of the season through the bowl game, Big Ten championship game if Iowa makes it, all of those things. He's going to remain intact until then through the end of the year. But at the end of the year, he's done. Iowa, Kirk Ferentz is finding a new offensive coordinator. So we'll just start there and say, what was your thought immediately when you heard the news?
I was surprised, Andrew, that he was being retained through the rest of the season, right? Like, it's kind of an awkward situation where he's just going to let him have his swan song of, all right, ready or not, like, just let him play out the rest of the season, whether that's 4 or 5, maybe even 6 games if they go back to Indy, right? So I find that part awkward. I don't necessarily buy her explanation of the timing. And I don't care for Kirk always leaning into his laurels of, oh, well, we evaluate at the end of the season, like always do that, the whole narrative of, oh, it's been that way forever. Well, that's the problem with old people, Andrew, is people don't like to get out of their own way and out of the ways that they've always done shit, right? Mm-hmm. They have no, innovation, no, willingness to change anything. Not even back before, the 2015 championship game where Kirk 2.0 came out, right? So, yep. We were shocked at that offense of 3 tight ends and, and the 3 tight ends that we had on the roster were so damn good, right? And, with Henry Krieger Coble being the latter of the 3, I mean, he still had a season or 2 in the NFL as well. I think at the times that Kirk has been willing to and made changes, have taken steps in the program that needed to be taken. So I'm hoping that this is a reality check for Kirk in the grand scheme of things of, well, you have no choice now because someone else made it for you. I don't know. I still think it's a 50-50 shot that he continues to coach after this season, despite the note that he left for Hawk fans yesterday. I'm not 100% sure he comes back in 2024, despite that.
All right. Well, I'm more willing to take Kirk at his word on that. So, but we'll get to that in a minute. We can talk about that later. I think the timing is one whole subject that we have to talk about. I thought the timing was okay. I know it's a little bit awkward to retain him for the rest of the season, but also you're not really going to switch it up. You're not going to change your whole offense midseason. Not with Iowa's personnel. You're not really able to do that on the fly. You could let someone else have a chance at calling plays, but I'm not really sure exactly what purpose that serves. I think the timing is more so to say, hey, immediately once the season ends, regular season, championship week, whatever it is for Iowa, you're searching, you're doing interviews at that time because that's when every other school is making their interviews for their coordinator hires, their head coach hires. If you don't do that, you're behind the eight ball. Because I do think that Brian Ferentz was going to leave after this season of his own accord, but they were going to wait for an NFL landing spot to open up for him first. Well, if you do that, you're picking from the leftovers of the potential offensive coordinators. So I think Beth Getz is really forcing the issue with Kirk and letting him know, hey, I'm your boss. I am not afraid to do whatever it is that I need to do the job of athletic director, whether I have the interim tag or not. And I really like that because as we saw, Gary Barta put her in a tough position and she did what she had to do in a tough position. So I really like the move. I thought it was the right move and the right timing as well. I think the team is going to galvanize behind it a little bit, and that's a good thing. But also, you kind of quell all of the distractions, right? The fire Brian chants aren't going to happen anymore because I know that players took exception to that kind of thing, and they should. They should.
Yeah.
So I think all of that kind of vitriol and stuff that was kind of bubbling up within the program kind of goes away. The other thing is it sends a message to current players that were thinking about leaving that there will be change. Current coaches that were thinking about leaving, there will be change. And you get a few games to make yourself as attractive as possible. Because if Brian Ferentz came back next season, we're not getting anybody in the transfer portal.
No.
And Iowa is going to have to go to the transfer portal yet again next season to fulfill needs on both sides of the ball. Probably easier to recruit guys on defense with Phil Parker than to the Iowa offense, right? I mean, no bones about getting transfer players on defense, but we need to get transfer players again on offense. And so the quicker you can make those decisions about who's going to be the offensive coordinator, the quicker you can pitch something new to players in the transfer portal. So
that is true, Andrew. And at the end of the day, how frustrated we've been with the offense the last 3 years. Like, there's still a human element behind who Brian Ferentz is, right? Like, I feel terrible that this is what it's come down to. We've all wanted to have him succeed as Hawkeye fans, right? We didn't want him to fail. We didn't want it to come to this. And there's been a lot of talk about this whole 25 points a game thing. And no one in the Big Ten West averages 25 points a game. And I think only 4 teams total in the Big Ten do that. So like, was that even achievable? It doesn't matter because it wasn't even close. Not even close to that number. But yeah, there's been no innovation in the offense. There's been no progress the last 3 years.
Yeah.
We've had the talent, and obviously Kirk kind of leaned into the injury bug on that Tuesday presser, right? We can't help when injuries happen, but we're not going to make any excuses. We're going to move forward. But you just fucking made an excuse, right? Like, it's like passive aggressive, like the whole presser, in my opinion, Andrew. Like, but he didn't blow up either. Like I thought he would, like, gradually get frustrated enough to, like, just not necessarily like go off, but get more frustrated as the presser went on. I didn't see that. He was short. He took the high road as far as, we're going to keep it private of all the particulars, the timeline, what was said, what were the disagreements. It's private. And I appreciated that on both parts of Beth and Kirk. And I see your point of ripping the Band-Aid off now, right? He's not making 25 points anyway, but they can still win 10 games, and they can still go to Indy, and they can still play in a New Year's Six. Like, it's still all on the table.
Right.
So Is it going to fire up the offense, Andrew? Is it going to change anything in play calling? Like, is he still going to call the plays? Or do we, Kirk's calling the fucking plays anyway, so, like, does it matter?
Yeah, I don't know if it necessarily matters for this season. I mean, it'd be absolutely hilarious if Brian Ferentz just says, F it, I'm going out blazing, guns blazing, just starts emptying out the playbook with things we've never seen, and they have success with it, but I don't really expect that. But what I wanted to move to here on first down is talk about potential replacements for Brian Ferentz, because I think that's the first step, and that's where we should talk a little bit tonight. I've heard a few names. Some are realistic, some are not. All the fans out there thinking Bob Stoops is coming back or something. No, that's not happening. So that's just like a fan fiction pipe dream. So you can toss that out the window. Another name that I really really like has Iowa ties, but I think is ultimately a long shot is Washington's offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, born in Kingsley, Iowa. He has been the offensive coordinator at Washington for the past 2 years. He turned down Alabama offensive coordinator this past offseason because he wanted to stick with his guys that had stuck with him, the guys that committed to him, because he wanted to run it back with Michael Penix Jr., Romeo Dunze, Jalen McMillan, few other guys on that team that I can't remember right off the top of my head. And so he might be looking around this offseason, but I think he's going to be a good candidate for a lot of head coach jobs. So I don't know if he's a good candidate for Iowa. So okay, go ahead. I'll let you.
Yeah. I mean, if he didn't take the opportunity to go to Alabama, right? Like that's the fast lane to head coach, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's been that way for a while. Bill O'Brien reimaged himself. Lane Kiffin reimaged himself. Steve Sarkisian reimaged himself, all under Nick Saban. So, like, I don't know, if you're not going to take the Alabama job, I don't think you're taking the Iowa job.
But I think it didn't take the Alabama job for reasons that are not football related. I mean, that are football related and aren't football related, right? He wanted to commit to his guys at Washington.
I'm so
legit,
I'm so scabbed over, like with like shit like that. Like, oh, I'm gonna stick with my guys. Well, eventually they're all going to be your guys every year, Andrew, and there's always going to be your guys that come back the next year, right? Like,
true.
So like that narrative, whatever. I mean, I guess, but like your team's going to be your team every year.
Yeah, but I will tell you that Washington's going to lose their quarterback, their top 3 receivers, their top tight end, their top running back, offensive lineman. They're going to lose a lot of guys to either graduation or early entry NFL. So it's the perfect time to leave.
And joining the Big Ten.
And join the Big Ten. But I will say that the Iowa offensive coordinator job does have its kind of attractive elements to it, right? I mean, if you're the one that turns around the Iowa offense, you're going to be considered some sort of a college football miracle worker.
There's one caveat to that, Andrew.
Yeah, I know. I know what you're about to say. Go ahead.
If Kirk actually lets him run the fucking offense.
Yeah, that's exactly it right there. And that's the whole key question with the entire offensive coordinator search. So, a couple other names, though, that I want to toss out there. Jim Zebrowski, Kansas quarterbacks coach. Kansas offense. They like to run the ball, and they're creative in doing it. You talked about the lack of imagination. Kirk Ferentz wants to run the ball. Kansas is just creative in how they go about it, and it would accomplish a lot of the same goals that Kirk Ferentz wants. South Dakota State offensive coordinator, Zach Luan, I think would be kind of my third choice. South Dakota State's been a powerhouse. I know there might be a little bit of concern about, jumping up a level, but man, they've had a successful offense, and he's a run first guy as well. 29-year-old guy, though. It's a very young guy. There'll be an interesting dynamic with Kirk Ferentz and that young of an offensive coordinator. But what I'm getting at is the candidates that Iowa should legitimately look at are guys that accomplish what Kirk Ferentz wants to accomplish ultimately on offense, but they do it in modern ways. And you can do that. Someone just needs to sit Kirk Ferentz down and say, you can accomplish everything that you want to. You can run a ball control offense that doesn't turn it over, but that scores points and is a little bit more creative. You can accomplish everything you want to on offense, Kirk. It's just here's a modern way to do it. Essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I like your suggestions. I don't think it's a big deal at the coaching profession of different levels between San Diego, South Dakota State, and Iowa. Um, as opposed to like talent level on the field, like the players, right? Like I feel like if you have a great mind in football, like that's going to translate from FCS to FBS, regardless, especially offensively. It's going to be about the players on the field, more or less at the end of the day, if they can execute something, new. I don't know, like it. I don't know. They had so I listened to Nebraska Hawks Nest podcast earlier this week on Monday. They had Drew Tate on. I don't know if you happened to catch that at all.
No, I haven't listened to it yet.
But it was really good with those guys. But yeah, I mean, Drew and Kirk had a love-hate relationship, right? Like Drew pushed the envelope in those play callings that were just like how he felt was asinine, right? He made a lot of calls on the field that Kirk was not happy with, but resulted in success more times than not. So I mean, somebody's got to challenge the head coach at some point, or it's just not going to work.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see a new version of Kirk Ferentz, and that kind of leads me into my next point about Kirk Ferentz. He did put out the statement that said he's staying, and if I can interpret Kirk speak, to me that means it's like you're gonna have to peel me off the field when I'm dead. is what I heard from that statement. Like he's just like, yeah, you're gonna have to peel me off the field when I'm dead and gone. I'm gonna do this basically until my mind doesn't work or I no longer like doing it, and that could be a while. But maybe things can change with that kind of quickly. I do think 2024 he will be here next season, but I think who he hires as offensive coordinator is gonna tell us a lot about how long he plans on being here. Because if he hires a young guy, I think the chances of him being here for 5 years and living out that contract through 2029 is very high. But there's been rumors of like him hiring Paul Chryst, the former Wisconsin head coach who was offensive coordinator as well. That's someone that Kirk respects and would probably let him have full control of the offense because of that mutual respect that is there. So that might be a good hire, even if Paul Chryst is maybe not the brightest offensive mind that there is out there. It might be a good hire simply for the fact that Kirk will let him run it his way because of that respect. But to me, that would signal it's like Kirk is all in on maybe 1 or 2 years and then done. So I think who he hires will tell us a lot about how long he actually plans on staying at Iowa.
Pat Fitzgerald?
I don't think we need any of that kind of controversy after we just came out of controversy.
Have you seen the random ass rumors of Urban Meyer going to Michigan State though? Speaking of controversy.
Yeah, I have.
You think there's any legs to that?
I think it's really a lot of internet rumors right now.
Because you just fired a dude that like sexually harassed a rape survivor in your program, right? Like, and Mel Tucker.
Yeah, you think you would want to be far away from any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You'd want to go with some sort of hire that's way outside of that, who has none of those known issues at all, and maybe do your research a little bit before you hire the next guy. I'm just maybe I think what they should do is bring back Pat Narduzzi. I think that would be their best bet. Let's bring back Pat Narduzzi for a little bit, who was the defensive coordinator under Mark D'Antonio. So, and head coach at Pitt, who has had some success at Pitt as well. So bring him back, I think, would be their best.
I'm also surprised that somebody like Dan Mullen's not still in football. Like, he's in the booth on ESPN. Like, I thought he was a really good coach.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that. You can pull somebody who's been out for a little bit, but I know that Urban Meyer can be a successful college football coach, but do you really want all the extracurricular stuff after what you just went through? I don't think so. And same with Iowa and Pat Fitzgerald. We just went through a bunch of national storylines with Brian Ferentz. Let's hire somebody who's quote unquote safe at the offensive coordinator position. Safe in the fact that we aren't going to make national headlines maybe in a bad way by hiring them.
Sure.
So that's where I'm at. Any last thoughts before we take a little bit of a break and hear from Revelton Distillery and Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage?
No. Let's hear from him.
All right.
At Revelton Distilling Company, everyone has become a part of the Revelton family. From the Taylors and their daughter who helped perfect their award-winning gins, to the team who installed Lucy, our 33-foot-tall custom-made still, right down to the local farms that provide our coveted corn, and even the cows on those farms who consume our mash byproduct. Want to see the farm to flask come to life? Now you can tour Lucy and find out where we take Iowa's harvest and transform it into our finest spirits. Choose between a 45-minute tour or find out even more by scheduling a VIP behind-the-scenes tour to get the taste of the full Revelton experience. You can visit them at 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa, or find all of Revelton's award-winning spirits at any local grocery or spirits retailer. Are you in the market for a new house and unsure of the mortgage process? Want to know that you have someone looking out for you? Kyle Lehman from Wintrust Mortgage is a down-to-earth, knowledgeable lender who can be there for you in your corner. He can work with you in any of the 50 states and is just what you need to expand your home search. Kyle will work with you through the entire process with little to no work from you. Take the worry of the mortgage process out of the equation so that you can focus on looking for your dream home. Contact Kyle at www.wintrust.com/Kyle-Lehman or call him at 515-473-0546.
All right. Welcome back in. Thank you to our sponsors as always. And there's a football game this week. Even with all the other stuff going on, still got to lock in and talk about the football game. It's at Wrigley Field. Iowa's playing Northwestern at Wrigley. Historic venue. You'll be there. What are you most looking forward to about being there at Wrigley Field? Have you ever been to Wrigley, first of all?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
And have you been there for a football game? Probably not. But what are you looking forward to if you haven't been there for a football game before?
So I've been to Chicago for a football game. The first one was Soldier Field against NIU. The thing about games played in Chicago is just seeing the black and gold wherever you are, whether it's down in Navy Pier or in Wrigleyville, like anywhere in the Chicagoland area, you will literally see thousands of black and gold fans, just saying "Go Hawks," drinking their eyes out. It's crazy. Like I like the atmosphere that they create as Iowa fans. Like, I've never been to a bowl game, but I imagine like these one-off neutral site games that they do is pretty close to that, right? So the regular season game that actually matters, right in the middle of the Big Ten. I look forward to seeing all the fans down in Wrigleyville, all the bars and establishments down there. I have been to Wrigley Field for several Chicago Cubs baseball games. Picked up some tickets to sit in the rooftops, Andrew, over left field, which I guess is somewhere around the 30-yard line either way. So we don't have like the flagpole in the way or anything. Should have a full view of the field. Unlimited food and booze, Andrew, and that's a problem.
Oh boy. So what we've just been told is that the instant reaction on Saturday night could be very interesting from
It's gonna
Bree
be off
Shipley.
it's gonna be off the chain. It's gonna be off the chain.
Okay. All right. Well,
No.
I am looking forward to that. Northwestern, the football team, a little bit better than what we expected preseason. They just beat Maryland. They beat Minnesota in a wild comeback. They are what, 4-4?
4-4. Yep.
4-4 through 8 games. Iowa is 6-2. Northwestern made a quarterback switch to Brendan Sullivan, who I believe played last year, but he had a good game in his last time out against Maryland. 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 69.6% completion percentage. He can run a little bit. I believe he was their leading rusher as well in that ball game. So I don't think this is like a great Northwestern team. I don't think I would define any Big Ten West team as great, but this is a better than expected Northwestern team, and so Iowa's going to have to be ready to play in this one.
I think they will be, Andrew. Honestly, I don't think Northwestern's offense will present many problems to the Iowa defense. I think Iowa defense right now is peak Iowa defense.
Mm-hmm.
Special teams will be special teams. I want to see what Northwestern's defense can do. After bye week for the Hawks, to see if they've changed anything offensively, if they can run the ball. And what happened to Maryland, man? Like, Maryland was like a really good story out of the Big Ten East early in the conference schedule, and they kind of imploded. But Northwestern will be Iowa will be the toughest defense Northwestern's seen this year. So
Right.
I'm not too concerned overall about the outcome of the football game. I think the historic low of 29.5 points set on Sunday is still not low enough.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Because I don't know what the weather forecast looks like. I don't know that it really matters.
No.
Given the quarterback play at Iowa, Deacon Hill has just been poor.
Like literally the worst quarterback in college football.
Yeah. 160 out of 160 qualifying passers, and like every quarterback stat that you want to throw out there, Deacon Hill is at the lowest point of lowest points.
Yeah.
And so I think this will be a game where finally all of our running backs are 100% healthy. I think Caleb, Jazz, and LaShawn will all be 100% healthy. And Iowa is going to have to run the ball 40 however many times like they did against Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they do that, they'll probably win the game. Because like you said, they're not giving up anything through the air. Wanted to highlight something that I saw in all the coverage snaps that Cooper DeJean and Sebastian Castro have had this year. They have allowed exactly 0 passing touchdowns.
Holy shit.
And like also like the passing grade of the quarterbacks throwing at them was like 42 or below for both of them.
That's pretty impressive.
So if you throw at DeJean or Castro, good luck.
Yeah.
So they're gonna target Harris, Schulte, Wankpa, but those guys are maybe not to the same level as Coop and Castro, but they're still pretty good.
Yeah.
And so Northwestern's had some success throwing the ball, but I don't think they're going to have as much success this week.
Yeah, I mean, playing down there right off Lake Michigan, right? It's called the Windy City for a reason. They're always paying attention when the Cubs are playing, whether the wind is blowing in or out, like, because it's always present. So I don't think, generally speaking, the passing game will be much to be had on either side. Doesn't matter who our quarterback is for the Hawkeyes. Wouldn't have mattered. 200 yards rushing gets us a double-digit win. That like point blank.
Yeah, and we need to see them actually run the ball, because I'm just looking at Northwestern. on rushing defense, and they've given up at least 100 yards rushing in every single game this season, regardless of opponent. And like when they played Duke, they gave up 268 yards and 5 rushing touchdowns to Duke.
Man,
Like Duke
yeah.
essentially said, we are not throwing the ball unless we have to against you guys, and we are running it down your throat. And Iowa just needs to do a version of that. They probably won't have the same success that Duke did on the ground. They probably won't score 5 touchdowns. I don't imagine, and break the over themselves. But I think Iowa will score multiple touchdowns on the ground in this game. I think that's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
So
I just don't see this game being in question, Andrew. Like, I'm not worried.
okay.
Like, we have nothing to lose, right? There's no other time ticking bomb, Brian Ferentz shit, distraction, whatever you want to call it. That's down and out. We're coming off a bye week. I wish I would have looked it up before, Andrew, what Kirk Ferentz's record is after bye.
Yeah.
But my recollection believes that it's pretty outstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll have to look that up maybe for the post game.
Yep. Keep that in your hat for the post game. Basketball. I don't know if we want to touch on basketball at all. Men's team had an exhibition. The freshman class looked good in the exhibition. Brock Harding and Owen Freeman are going to play quite a bit this season, I have a feeling. And Josh Dix just seemed to be steady, kind of out there on the court. So that starts up early next week, I believe, on Monday. The women tip off on Monday and the men tip off on Tuesday of next week. So we've got that to look forward to when we come back next Thursday night. We'll have Iowa football to talk about pregame, and we'll also have some basketball games to review. So we're kind of getting to that busy season where all of the major sports are going at once, and it's a beautiful thing. But just looking ahead, has anything that's happened recently with Iowa football changed your mindset maybe about the prospects of Indy? Do we still think that's on the table? That's still a reasonable prospect given the schedule?
Yeah, right. So like before we even talked about the Wisconsin game, right? I listed out that, the remaining opponents' offensive rankings were all like 110th or higher, right? Like nobody offensively can challenge Iowa's defense. So, therefore, they are all winnable games.
Yeah.
Right? No, it doesn't change it. I still expect to win out until the Nebraska game on Black Friday, and see what happens then.
Okay, I think I'm with you, because while they are all winnable, I do think there's a certain element that they are all losable too, because Iowa could just come out and kind of like Minnesota, can't do anything on offense, even though the defense is absolutely horrid, and lose a game where the opponent doesn't score a touchdown again. But I don't really see that happening. So anyways, no need to drag this podcast out. I think we've got most of what we needed to say out there.
Do you want to talk at all about the 2024 conference schedule?
Oh, okay, yeah, that did just drop today.
Yep.
Because it's a little bit of a daunting task if I'm looking at it.
Yeah, these road trips are pretty wild, Andrew, and they have 2 bye weeks in between them both. Between the Big Ten opener at Minnesota, and then go to at Ohio State, right? That's that's a daunting slate there, and then return home for Washington. But just as big, they play in LA November 9th.
Yep.
Have a bye, and then they come clear out here in late November to play at Maryland. How do I not remember that there's 2 bye weeks in college football? Or like, what is this? Like, I'm looking at 2 byes, right?
No, you are looking at 2 byes.
Yeah.
Man, I I think that's new though, with all of the traveling that teams are going to be doing. Yeah, I think the 2-bye system is kind of relatively new here. So I haven't dug too deep into the schedule, but I know that we started out with 3 of our first 4 Big Ten games on the road.
Yeah, Minnesota, Ohio State, and Michigan State all on the road, with Washington
Wedged in there.
Oh my God, yeah.
Hey, even more reason to go steal Washington's offensive coordinator and get a leg up on them.
Wouldn't that be great?
It would be great. So that's where I'm at. Let's go ahead and toss out some score predictions for this week. Over under is 29.5. Under 13 to 6 Iowa. I don't know. It's like, I think the Cubs had a higher scoring baseball game this year where they scored 20 runs.
They did.
They won like 20-9 against some team.
Yeah.
In Wrigley. And I don't think these football teams are going to come close to scoring 29 combined.
No, they're not.
It's going to be 13 to 6 Iowa, I think. Well, I guess I did say multiple touchdowns on the ground. So let's go 16 to 6. 2 rushing touchdowns and a safety. We got to get a safety in Wrigley Field, okay? That way we can be the first team and probably the only team to ever score a safety in Wrigley Field.
I mean, didn't the Chicago Bears used to play in Wrigley?
Okay, true. But the first college football team, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So my prediction actually was 13-3. So I'm glad you switched it up.
Yep.
Yeah, they're not touching 29 either. 200 yards rushing. That's the key. You run the ball down their throat, time possession. Like, this game's going to be really, really slow moving, Andrew, because as you probably know, these two teams are sharing the same sideline, right? So, like, they're divided by the 45-yard lines out. So, like, imagine this defensive tackle and the substitution deal coming from the opposite 45-yard line, clear down to the 5, right? And
my.
This is going to be a very long, dragged-out football game, especially for those in the stands, because it's going to be a little chilly. But, yeah, I would expect a 3.5-hour broadcast from your couch, Andrew.
Dude, 3.5 hours of Peacock. I don't know if I'm going to survive, man.
Dude, I might be home by the time you see the final play. Not home, but the Airbnb with the delays.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I do not want to sit through 3.5 hours of Peacock. Cannot do it. The production quality is not great.
And it turns out that you're going to do it.
Yeah, I am going to do it because I like Iowa football too much to not do it.
Oh, snap.
So that's where I'm at.
Yep.
I don't know. Hopefully the production is better than the last time the Hawks were on Peacock, because that was a disaster.
It was really
as far
bad.
as the production goes.
Yep.
So time for our final cut here. You got any last thoughts?
The Iowa volleyball team hosts number 1 Nebraska in a sold-out Carver Hawkeye, from my understanding, or sold out wherever they play. Do they play at the Extreme Arena? The volleyball?
I believe so. Yep.
It's sold out. So go Hawks, beat number 1 Nebraska.
Yeah, go Hawks. Just again, I am looking forward to the rest of the season for Iowa football, but I think this is going to be the most important offseason of Kirk Ferentz's career. Who he hires is going to either disappoint or excite the fan base. And the key question is something that Drew hit on. And will Kirk Ferentz give up control of the offense? That is really the key question, regardless of who is hired to fulfill the offensive coordinator role. If Kirk gives up control, we are going to see success on offense. Yep. And it's as simple as that. So with that, I'll say a good night and go Hawks.
Go Hawks. See you in Chicago.